Okay. So, yeah, and I don't see anything in the chat either. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share Lithium with you guys. And so, since we were finishing up on Cournot, let's go ahead and take a look at these. And like I said, we should be fine up through question 8. So, why don't you guys go ahead and work on the first 3, let's say first 4 questions. And we know the other ones kind of run together, but yeah. So let's go ahead and do the first 4 questions. And you guys can see that I can have you view questions 1, 2, and 3, but question 4 is just related to question 3. So if you answer questions 2 and 3, then question 4 should be really easy. Okay. I have to resume. I just don't record the breaks. Okay, so how'd you guys do? Does anybody have the answer to question 1? If you have the answer, go ahead and raise your hand. Robin has an answer. Anybody else? Okay, so Psalm has an answer. We haven't heard from you in a little while, Psalm. So do you have a mic? I'm waiting. Do you have a mic? No mic. Oh, come on. You know, there's not even a mic on your computer. Ah, so disappointing. Okay, well, we'll just pause on you for a minute. And then, okay. How about this? If you don't know the answer, raise your hand. Okay. So, Ian raises his hand. Everybody else knows the answer? Okay. Danny, Leon, Greg. Greg doesn't know the answer? Oh my gosh. I thought Jesse, Aubrey. So we're down. Okay. Let's see. So everybody else knows the answer. Okay. So Carlton, are you there? Do you have a mic? Carlton? Okay. Okay, remember, if you don't know the answer, keep your hand up. Okay. Okay. Okay, so what about you, Giselle? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm still kind of working through it. I'm thinking, do you add MC1 to the equation and then do a separate equation and do the same thing?
Well, okay, so now that's different. So I thought you were in the group that knew the answer.
Well, I'm kind of still working through it, so I didn't want to
Yeah.
say I
So
didn't.
just remember, right? So when we're getting the total quantity the duopoly is going to produce, you need to first formulate the reaction function for firm one and firm two. That's like kind of our first step. And what we did last time, right, is we spent all the time developing the reaction function. So if you don't have a reaction function for firm one and you don't have a reaction function for firm two, you can't answer the question. So did you get to the reaction function stage, or where you get stuck?
No, I did get stuck there.
You didn't get stuck there,
No, I did get stuck there.
you did get stuck there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of like the first part. So so let's pause and let's see. What about Juan? Do you have an answer for us, Juan? Okay. And um, no Juan. Okay. What about you, Kyle? Uh, okay. And oh, okay. What about Nelly? Nelly? Okay. How about Omnia? Are you there, Omnia?
Hi,
Hey, how's it going?
good. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a beautiful day outside. I don't know if you've taken a look or not.
No, I mean, I'm looking. It's just not that sunny here.
Oh, really? Oh, where are you?
I live in Diamond Bar near Pomona.
Oh, really? See, so I'm in Fullerton, which is, just down the road from you a little bit, and here it's blue skies. So, um,
So,
so
what was the
it
question again?
it's coming your direction. Well, the question is question number one.
Oh, so can I just give the answer that I got?
Well, okay, but we want to kind of roll it out a little bit because we have people
Okay.
that are a little bit confused. So you got the reaction function for firm one, right?
Yes. So my reaction function was 128 minus 14Q1 minus 7Q2.
Okay, do you want to type it in the chat for us?
Yeah,
So
sure.
you can just put remember we also call it the best response function. So I'll put BRF1 and then you could put like remember it's going to be Q1 is equal to some function of Q2, and actually I'll put lowercase q1 and lowercase q2. So if you can write it like in that form, did you see what I
Sure.
put in the chat? Like that,
Yeah.
then that's probably a good place to start. Okay. So, let's ask. So Robin, do you agree with Omnia's reaction function?
I when she read it, I kind of had a different base react or base I'm blanking right now. But basically, I had the
Yeah,
128.
so I put BRF as best response function
Yeah,
because remember that's another way of talking about the reaction function.
yeah.
It's in the Nash world,
Uh-huh.
your quantity for firm 1 Q1 is the profit maximizing choice of output given some level of output for firm 2.
Uh-huh.
So that's why it's their best response. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. For mine, I had 128 minus Q2 with a bar over it, and then minus 14 Q1, which is double of that, equals 10Q, which caused me to add the 10Q to both sides, which gets me 24. So I ended up with my reaction function for Q1 being 128 divided by 24 minus 7 divided by 24 Q2.
Yeah, well, if you convert it to decimals, does it end up
Oh,
being different?
um,
Because you can see hers.
yeah, let me check that out real quick.
Yeah. And actually, I prefer dealing with fractions too, but sometimes it gets a little bit.
Yeah.
It's because if you're able to keep things in terms of fractions, then it minimizes your rounding error. But as soon as you put a fraction in there, I mean a decimal in there, then you've got rounding error issues.
Yeah, I had the exact same answer in decimal form.
Okay, that's good. So, and then I'll ask Ruben. Ruben, did you get the same thing too?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the same thing? For the reaction function for firm 1. I'm guessing I think you said yes, Ruben, but I didn't hear. You could type in the chat, yes. Okay. So. Okay, so Ruben says yes too. So I'm going to give a provisional clap to Omnia. Yay. Okay, but it's provisional because we don't have the final answer yet. So remind me. Now, since we're doing things in decimal form, so now I'll ask the other people that have their hand raised. So Ian, you chimed in that I think you said you got the same thing. But is there anybody, Aubrey, Noah, Greg, Ivan, Trevor, Efren, Leon? Is there anybody that has a question about what Omnia did?
I just joined a little late, but I'm going through it right now.
Okay. Anybody else? Is everybody comfortable with Omnia's answer?
I was able to get the reaction function, but I'm just kind of confused on where to go from there.
Okay. So Efren, your mic is kind of low. I could just barely hear you.
Oh,
But
maybe I'll put it closer.
yeah. So you're saying you got the reaction function, but then you got stuck. But you agree with you agree with the reaction function for firm 1.
Yeah, for firm 1, and I mean, I'm pretty sure I got the same thing for firm 2, like the reaction function, right? And I know I'm trying to plug in firm 2's reaction function into firm 1's reaction function to find the quantity for firm 2, but I'm not sure if I'm going about that right.
Yeah, well, actually, so that's just a little bit of algebra, but let's go ahead and make sure we have a good reaction function for firm 2 now, because that would be our next step. So let me ask Aubrey. Aubrey, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Does it work? If not, I can add a mic attachment.
No, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So what about you? Are you comfortable with the reaction function for firm 1?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me
Okay.
double check that I got it correct though.
Okay.
Yeah. Then
Okay.
I believe I have the reaction function for firm 2.
Okay. Do you want to type it in for us? And
Yeah.
So what I was hoping Omnia was gonna do, and she almost did it, but like I was gonna say, I have BRF for firm 2, and then I put a little colon, and I would say Q2, little Q2 is some function of the output for firm 1. That's the form that if you could type it like that, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So now I'll ask the rest of you, do you agree with Aubrey's reaction function for firm 2? Robin says he agrees. Does anybody disagree? Does anybody need some more help? Okay. So Leon, are you there? Because you're the top of my queue, Leon. Yes, but you don't have a mic. Okay, fair enough. What about you, Ivan? Are you good? Oh, hold on. Okay. Okay. Okay, so Ivan, I don't know how you can drive to Costco and do this at the same time. Be safe. Anyway, and what about you, Jesse? How are you doing?
I'm not too sure how you got the what is it? How you guys got the
So I'm looking at Aubrey's line here. Can you see it? So she is BRF2 is Q2 equals 7.53 minus 0.14 Q1.
yeah.
So which part are you struggling with?
Well, I'm not too sure how you did it. How you get it, like, period.
Okay. So do you remember anything about formulating the reaction function?
That was last class, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay. Because if you don't know where to start, then it's gonna be almost impossible. So I would recommend after this class you go back and review that other video because it should be available on YouTube
Okay.
for you to go through. But I'll try to help you out, because there's always, and one of the things I emphasized last class, there's always one general answer to these questions, and so I'll try to walk you through it. So the first question that kind of might put you on the right answer or the right track is, what are each of the firms trying to do? What's their objective? Are you with me, Jesse?
Oh, okay. You're asking me.
Yeah. What's their
Is it maximize profit?
Yeah, because that's always the right answer, right? They're trying to maximize their profits, right? And then the second thing is how well they're trying to maximize their profits by picking the level of output that will maximize their profits, right?
Yeah.
So how do they pick their level of output to maximize their profits?
Well, they produce at the low cost firm until they have to produce at the second one too, right? And then they find.
Well, that's actually for the cartel.
Oh, okay.
But even the cartels are going to do exactly what I'm going to suggest if you think about it for a minute. So if you're a competitive firm, or you're a monopolist, or you're a cartel producer, which is like a type of monopolist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're a Cournot firm and you're trying to maximize your profits, they all follow the same rule. And do you know what the rule is? Think about it. I suggested, I think last time, and I don't know if you remember, if you viewed that lecture, if you were with us, that people get a tattoo with this on it.
Yeah, and I was kind of in and out last lecture because I went to the hospital the night before. That's why.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's why I need to go over that lecture again.
Are you feeling better?
No, yeah, I'm fine. I had like I got hit in the eye with a piece of wood. So.
Oh no!
Yeah, but I'm good now.
You were working, I imagine, when that happened.
Yeah. So, but
yeah,
I'm good now. I just haven't had time to go over that lecture again.
Working can be hazardous to your health.
Yeah.
But we all got to work.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you actually didn't even need that lecture to get this. So I'm gonna put it for you. Okay. So
Okay.
to maximize profits, I'll put it in the chat. To maximize profits, firms, and then this is going to be a pretty strongly worded statement. I'm going to say always pick the quantity, and I'll just call it Q star, where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Did you see I put it in the chat?
Yeah.
So in this case, in order to formulate the reaction function, what all of your colleagues have been doing is they've been looking at the marginal revenue for firm one and setting it equal to the marginal cost for firm one. And then they just play with that equation until they get it into the best reaction function form. So when you go back and you review the other lecture, then what you're going to find out is what makes Cournot different. So Cournot is distinguished from other sorts of forms of industry in that the marginal revenue for firm one is based on what we called I'll say comes from the residual demand for firm 1. So you're given the marginal cost for firm 1 in the problem. That's fine. The only issue that you have is finding this residual demand. And do you remember, Jesse, like when we have a demand function, how we generally find the marginal revenue? And like these linear demand functions.
Yeah, it's double the
Slope, right?
slope, right?
Yeah. So once you find the residual demand function, all you have to do is double the slope. So in this case, so we have PB is equal to 128 minus 7 QB, but QB is the total quantity that both of the firms produce together. So you use that. And that's how you start the problem, because then you can write the residual demand. And I'll just put RB for residual demand for firm 1 is equal to 128 minus, and then so you have 7 times Q1 plus Q2. Do you see what I wrote in the chat? And then you just distribute the 7, but remember you're looking at the residual demand for just firm 1. So you would end up with a residual marginal revenue. I'll just say the marginal revenue for firm 1 is going to be equal to 128 minus 7 Q2 minus 14 Q1. So you see what I did?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the important part is that, so in general, you would double the slope. And that's because, technically speaking, what you're doing is you're recognizing that marginal revenue is equal to the derivative of total revenue with respect to output generally. But now you're only considering changing. So do you see where I wrote marginal revenue? And remember those little D's stand for the change in, right?
Yeah.
So the change in total revenue as you sell an additional unit, so divided by the change in output. But now you're just considering the change in output for firm 1. So if you were to take the derivative of the total revenue function, so if I was to write total revenue is equal to P times Q, right? In this case, the total revenue for the residual demand for firm 1 is going to be the price as represented by the residual demand function, but only being multiplied by the output of firm 1. So anyway, the main point is, the short answer is you just have to make sure you don't double the 7 in front of Q2, because Q2 is being treated as a constant for firm 1. And so then if you see the equation that we had before, then you set that MR1 equal to MC1, and then you solve for Q1 on the left-hand side, and you'll end up getting what Omnia put originally earlier on in the chat. Okay, and then you do the same thing for firm 2, but now instead of the residual demand for firm 1, you're looking at the residual demand for firm 2. So anyway, that should be you know, enough help that when you view the other lecture and you go through it, then you know you should be able to get to the reaction functions. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. So I'll ask you guys now. So we have these two reaction functions, and I'll see. This is the reaction function for firm 1. Boom. And then we also have the reaction function. I'm trying to pick up the other one, but sometimes this. It doesn't want to give. Oh, I almost got it. Okay. Anyway, I'll just have to write it out. Let me make sure. Okay. Okay, this is what I have for the second one that Aubrey gave to us. So I got a question really quickly. So Ian, are you there? Ian?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, so you said you got a slightly different answer. Did you revise or you still think it's?
Yeah, I'm still looking back on it. And if I must be an error farther up than just dividing by.
Yeah, well, we can look at it really quickly, right? So if we look at the form of the residual marginal revenue, right? So for firm 2, it should just be 128 minus 7Q1 minus 14Q2, right?
Okay, minus 14. Oh yes,
Yeah.
that was the issue right there. 14. That was,
Okay. Okay. So does anybody disagree with those two reaction functions that I have in the chat? Anybody?
Why the hell did I?
Okay. Anybody disagree? If you disagree, speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay. So, I'm going to lower your hand, Ian, because I'm assuming you agree. So now I forget who it was who was talking earlier. Maybe it was Efren, but somebody said like, oh, well, I got these two reaction functions, or maybe it was Robin. Like I got the two reaction functions, but now I'm having a hard time with them. Anybody?
Yeah, it was me.
Do you feel better now?
Yeah, I think I'm on the right track now.
Yeah, well, because I mean, this part should be relatively easy. The algebra might be you know, a little bit messy, but all you have to do is, so I'm going to use the first reaction function. So I have 5.33 minus 0.29. And then I literally just substitute in for Q2 the 7.53 minus 0.41 Q1. And that's my next step. So do you see, Efren, how?
Yeah.
And then you just
yeah.
have to distribute the 0.29, you know, over the term in parentheses. Make sure you multiply 0.29 times 7.53, and it's minus 0.29 times minus 0.41, so it'll turn it to a positive, right?
Mhm.
And so Omnia, are you there?
Yeah.
So you agree?
Yeah. I got the same answer.
And so so let's see. What did you get for Q1?
For Q1, I got 3.57.
That's me clapping.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Everybody else is clapping too. And so question 4 would have been, what quantity does Q2 produce? Does anybody want to answer that one? Okay, Robin.
For Q2, I got 6.06.
That's a clap too. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so and now we should know the answer to question number 1, because it's the total quantity for both of the firms together, right? So that should be good. So I'm clapping for everybody here that's contributed. Good job. And the last one is this question number 2. So what price will prevail in the duopoly equilibrium? Does anybody want to help me out with that one? Does anybody have any questions? So Robin put his hand up and then down. So what about you, Greg? You haven't really been on stage for your 15 seconds of fame this morning.
Yeah, I apologize. I've been kind of playing catch up, but I agree with Robin. For the price,
Yeah.
this is kind of a shot I'm just taking here, but you'd use the total quantity of the duopoly, plug it into demand.
Yeah. So do you want to do that first really quickly, and you can chat, you can type your answer in the chat?
Yeah, let me run through it right now.
Professor, what was the answer for Q1, Q2, the final one?
Oh, well, so it's 9.63, right? You see it, you should be able to see it on the share screen. So question number 1 is 9.63, but that should just be the sum of 3.57 and 6.06.
Okay, thank you.
Is that good? So Greg says 60.63. Do you want to show us just really quickly how you justify your calculation, Greg? You can type that in the chat.
Sure. sure. Yeah, I basically just took the
Yeah.
demand.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Okay, I'm clapping for you. So does everybody see what Greg did? Does anybody have a question about it? So we answered those first 4 questions, and so then, and last time we talked about, and we went through, questions 5, 6, and 7. So I'm not going to go through those in detail unless somebody has a question about them. But I'll just show you guys the answers so you can write them down. In case you want to, finish this version of the problem on your own. And so, so question number 5, it's 223.09. Question number 6 is 789.25. And question number 7 is 90.75. And then we get to question 8, which is the leader-follower model, which we haven't talked about yet. So this is the new material. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, does anybody have any questions before we move on to the leader-follower model? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to stop sharing. And now I'll go to the whiteboard and start a new one. Okay. The leader-follower model, or it's called the Stackelberg and so who wants to chat with me, and I'll walk you guys through this. So how about you, Omnia? You have a mic. I think it's easier to do it in a conversational style.
Okay.
Easier for me. Okay, so now the Cournot model, the key is that it's a simultaneous play type of game, which means we're assuming that both players are acting at once together. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard about this, Omnia, or not, but sometimes in business, they talk about having a first mover advantage. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
No. Well, the idea is that sometimes rather than it being, access, like a monopolist, normally we talk about barriers to entry, right? So we talk about ownership of a key resource. If you're the only one that owns a diamond mine, then you could be the monopolist there. And sometimes we talk about technology. So, it could be that the technology lends itself to mass production. So like, silicone chip manufacturing. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but it's highly technical and you need these huge factories to do it. So generally, like, you don't do that kind of thing to produce one silicone chip. Instead, you can produce, millions, billions of these things. So that type of technology might cause somebody to be a monopolist just because once they start producing, they can spread their fixed costs of the factory, building the initial machine over many, many units, and then it might not be possible for other firms to enter. That's what we call, a natural monopoly situation. But generally, monopolies are created by government restrictions, normally like patents and copyright protection. So for people that develop new drugs and things like that, they get a patent, and it's normally for 17 years, and that gives them the exclusive right to sell the good that they discovered. But it's a monopoly, and they earn monopoly profits, and they cause deadweight losses. But I don't know if you've ever heard that sometimes the first business in an industry, like maybe you might think about Starbucks in that sort of a situation. Starbucks was the first that I know of nationwide chain of coffee shops to do things kind of the way that they do. And so do you think, like a lot of people would say, like that Starbucks has, and I don't know if you agree with this, Omnia, they have like a dominant position in the market.
I
Coffee.
do agree, but like, isn't it like places like Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, they also have like competition?
Well, yeah, but see, that's the question I wanted to get to, right? So I have a really great little coffee shop next to me, and I think it has like 3 or 4 locations, but it's pretty small. It's called Coffee Code. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I don't think so.
No, but the people that run it are like, I don't know, they're kind of like god level coffee makers. And what I mean by that is they have all of this like special like distilling equipment they have on display, and they go to these international competitions for like the best coffee. And honestly, I think that their coffee is better than Starbucks. I mean, I'm not saying like frappuccinos or whatever, but the question is like, well, and even if you talk about Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf and stuff like that, I mean, is there anybody that's on the scale of Starbucks?
No, absolutely not.
No. But then the question is why? I mean, if their coffee isn't really that much better, and in some sense their coffee can't really be better, right? Because they're all buying from different coffee producers around the world, and it's coming, like my coffee place is getting beans from the same producer or the same region, whether it's in Peru or Africa or wherever, as Starbucks. And like it's not like roasting coffee is something. Now obviously, like I said, the people next to me, they they study this thing like it's rocket science and the rest of it. But the point is that it's not like Starbucks has some special technique available to them or whatever. In fact, it's kind of funny. I went to this coffee shop down in Long Beach, and it kind of made me laugh because it was literally like a clone of a Starbucks coffee shop, but it wasn't Starbucks. I forget what they named themselves, something like, Starbuckles or something. And you know how Starbucks has like the green and the white, and they have the little logo and everything like that. This place was trying to be Starbucks. And trying to copy them as much as they could, probably without getting sued. But the main point is like, well, why does Starbucks have this dominant position? And there are a lot of people who have seen in other industries that the one that first goes into the industry, a lot of times those firms retain some sort of special advantage. And so they call it the first mover advantage. And this is why we have this leader follower model. because we're going to try to explain with this model why it is that even though there might not be a big difference in terms of technology and things like that, that the first one in an industry ends up being more profitable and producing more output than firms that are second movers. This is the follower. But even if you had like a third or a fourth follower. So if you recognize that some firms tend to be dominant, but they're not literally monopolists because they don't have, and the important distinction to plug into your knowledge bank is that to be a monopolist, you have to have a barrier to entry. You have to have something like a patent that blocks competitors. But here, there is no such barrier to entry. The only thing that we're noting is that the leader has some sort of special position in that they get to move first and decide to produce in this industry or choose their quantity first. So the way that we do that is we say that the leader has knowledge of the follower's reaction function. So in this case, the way that we're going to do it is we have to designate one of the firms as being the leader. And so let's say leader is firm 1. Okay. And then the follower is firm 2. So somewhat counterintuitively, what we do first is we find the reaction function of the follower. So the reason why this is counterintuitive is because you might think, oh, well, if we're going to, if the leader gets to move first, why don't we deal with the leader first? And it's because the way that we're giving the leader an advantage here is we're assuming the leader knows something that the follower doesn't. And what the leader knows that the follower doesn't is the leader knows the follower will follow. So that's the special advantage that the leader knows that the follower doesn't. And so the question is to come up with a good idea for how the follower will follow. Well, we know that the follower is going to try to maximize their profits. So the answer to the question is, how will the follower follow? Is the follower will choose to maximize her profit after the follower observes the leader's output choice. And that should sound familiar because that is literally the best response. So I'll put BRF, which we call the reaction function 2, is the best response to firm 1's output choice. Okay. So, what do we do? Well, we do the same thing that we did before. So we're gonna look at the best response function for firm 2. The follower. Okay. And so, Omnia, I'll ask you, does this all make sense now? Have I said anything that is mysterious or doesn't?
Yeah, but just to clarify, so like a leader would be someone like Google, for example, and then like a follower would be like, you know, Bing or Yahoo with like their search engines.
Yeah.
Like they still exist, but they're not like as big.
But like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Because like Google has become a verb, right? I'm gonna
Yeah.
Google it. You know? Yeah, exactly. That Google and Bing and other search engines. Now I will say this. I don't know if you've noticed or not. Google is an interesting example. But if you've ever tried, and I tried, I mean, I like Google, but when Bing first came out, because Microsoft has this dominant position in operating system software, inevitably, at the university, even though I in general loathe PCs, I have a PC, and I start up the Internet Explorer, and it defaults to Bing as the search engine. So I've tried to use Bing, but it's weird. Like every time I've tried to use it, I like type in what I would normally type in Google, and then I end up getting like just totally random, stuff coming out. So I guess my question to you, Omnia, have you noticed that other search engines just aren't as good as Google?
Yeah, I've tried using Bing and Yahoo, like sometimes like when I don't have a choice, you know?
Yeah.
And they never really come up with anything relevant to what I'm actually asking.
Yeah, and so the reason why I point that out is I don't know if you know anything about the history of Google, because I was there when Google first came out. But the people that developed Google, they actually have copyright to their search algorithm. And the search algorithm that they use, I mean, they spent a lot of time since then refining it, but their search algorithm is just really, really good. And so here we're talking about some sort of, combination of being a first mover in search, but also they do have something of a monopoly position, just because like a formula for a brand new drug that a pharmaceutical company develops, Google has a barrier to entry. Other people can search, and they can develop search engines, but they can't use Google's search algorithm. They got to come up with their own. And you might think that, like, in general, like all search algorithms are created equal, but it's really not true. And it's hard. I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I can tell you this much, and that is that when you're starting to talk about things like search, you're getting really, really close to a set of mathematical techniques for ordering, a set of objects and finding them. And once you start to boil things down to mathematical formulas, there are some mathematical formulas that just work a lot better than others. And so, to the extent that Google has that barrier to entry, that they have a mathematical formula that just works much better than others that are alternatives, until their copyright / patent expires on that search technology. I hesitate to call it technology because it's literally, a couple of lines of code. Then, it's going to be tough to compete with them. So they do have not only a first mover advantage, but they also have something of a monopoly position because there's a barrier to entry. But yeah, it's a perfect example to think about that, why is Google so dominant? But it's a kind of a combination of things. To the extent that you believe that Google has a dominant position in search because people are familiar with Google, then that's really the first mover advantage. If you really try to figure out, what's the substance of the first mover, it is something like a reputation effect. It's that, because Starbucks was the first nationwide coffee chain, people start to think of Starbucks first, not necessarily because their coffee is better or they have a better atmosphere or they have some special way of doing things, but merely because, it's kind of like, and another good example is McDonald's. McDonald's was the first, fast food franchise that specialized in just burgers, and now, a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to go get a burger, I'm going to go to Mickey D's. And it's just, they've been around for a long time. And so they have a special advantage that's kind of owing to the reputation. So any other questions, or we're good? Okay, I'm going to assume we're good. So what we have to do first is we have to, we could start with the residual demand here too. Right? And then from there, we end up using the same formula, the marginal revenue of firm 2 equal to the marginal cost of firm 2. Boom. And then that's going to give us the best response function for firm 2. So now we look at the leaders problem. And this is a little bit different. So remember that the best response function for firm 2 is going to give us the output for firm 2, and I'll write it the way that we did in the chat, right? It's going to give us the output of firm 2 as some function of the output of firm 1, okay? And so for the leader 2 is going to maximize profit. And profit's just going to be total revenue for firm 2 minus the total cost for firm 2. But now firm 2, because they know about the reaction function of firm 1, when they look at the residual demand, okay, so it's going to look a little bit different. So we'll use the same general form of industry or market level demand that we did before. And but now we'll note that Q, the industry quantity from the perspective of the leader, is going to be equal to the leader's output plus the best response function of firm 2. So what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with Q is equal to Q1 plus some function of Q1. And that's really going to change our math. So what really matters here is the total revenue part. we know the general rule for maximizing profit. We're still going to be looking at the marginal revenue of, oh, I'm sorry, I got to change my notation here. The profit of firm 1, because they're the leader. So the marginal revenue of firm 1 is going to be equal to the marginal cost of firm 1. Okay. So we're going to be given the marginal cost of firm 1 in the problem, of the leader in the problem, just like we did before. So what's going to really change is the total revenue function given our observation, right? So this is going to be our price as before, our PB, but I'm just going to write price times our quantity, but this is going to be just the quantity that firm 1 produces, right? And now we have our special form of our residual demand for firm 1. So I'm going to write P as A minus B, and just to be clear about what's being multiplied by what, I'll put Q1 plus, remember this is the best response function for firm 2, okay, times Q1. So that's what the revenue is going to look like. Okay, so Omnia, are you with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so does that make sense?
It looks a little confusing, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it's just the important part is what's really going on here that's different is before we had Q2 as being a constant there, remember?
Mhm.
And then we would multiply by Q1, and then when we took the derivative, since Q2 was a constant, it didn't really matter. It didn't really change the way that our marginal revenue looked. But now, since we're going to be having some function of Q1 in here, we're going to end up with, remember, when we had Q1 times Q1, that would be Q1 squared, and we had a quadratic, and we take the derivative of the quadratic, then we get 2 times B. But now we're also going to have this additional term where we have Q1 times some function of Q1, and we're going to end up with something different than just 2 times the coefficient B. Does that kind of, I mean, maybe it'll take a little while, a little bit of practice, but just technique-wise, can you see how things are different?
Yeah, they're definitely different. I just probably need to see it like
An
in
example.
practice, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So Greg, you raised your hand. Did you want to say something?
Does that give us a quadratic? Does that give us Q1
Well, no.
squared?
So that's a really good question. And yeah, I think you'll end up with a quadratic there too, just because the basic best response function is going to be linear in, like we had before. We had Q1 was equal to 5.33 minus, whatever, 0.41 Q2. That was linear. So you will end up with another quadratic term in there too. But this best response function, because it's linear, you're going to end up with an extra linear term too. So it's going to look a little bit different. The math isn't going to be that much more complicated. You're only going to have to deal with quadratics or linear terms, like, but yeah. So in this case, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, if you had a nonlinear best response function, which could happen if you had a demand function that was different, it could be different. But in this case, it'll be quadratic. Okay.
Okay.
So then our next step was from the total revenues. Remember, our marginal revenue then is, and the only thing we can really do at this point in time without doing an example is note that it's going to be the derivative with respect to Q1. Okay. And then you guys will see, like before, like Greg mentioned, we'll have quadratic terms and linear terms. And so taking the derivative will be pretty straightforward. Okay, so I will pause sharing or stop sharing, and I'll go back to the problems we were looking at before. And so this is, again, total industry output, and then how much is produced by firm 1 and firm 2. So this is like a mirror of the first 4 questions we did for Cournot, but now in this leader-follower Stackelberg model. So in our case, you know, we could look at 10 and 11 first, and then 10 plus 11 is going to be equal to 8. And then we can look at the market price. So let's see. Okay, yeah, I think we should have enough time to invest in this one. So let's look. So we have 128 minus 7Q as our PB, and yeah, everything else is the same. MC1 is 10Q1, MC2 is 3Q2, and okay. So let's go ahead, just so it doesn't give us a hard time later, and we'll look at the answers here. We have Q1 is equal to 4.13, and Q2 is equal, oh, actually, well, we have the profits of firm 2 for question 11, deadweight loss. So let's look at the total industry output, and we get a total Q equal to 9.96. Okay, so I'm going to stop that share, and we'll go back to the whiteboard, and we'll do an example. So we have PB is equal to 128 minus 128 minus 7Q, and okay. And we have MC1, and let's just do really quickly to make sure that we have all of our facts correct. So yeah, so firm 1 is the leader and firm 2 is the follower. Okay. Okay. So we have 10 Q1 and MC2 is equal to 3 Q2. Okay. So we said the first step was followers best response function. And so we'll do the residual demand. And we could actually take our answer from last time because we were fine with it, right? But I'll just go ahead and run through it here quickly. And if you guys have any questions, then stop me. So I'll call this PRB for residual demand for firm 1. And we'll say that's equal to 128 minus, and then I'm going to go ahead and just expand things. Uh, 7 Q2, and so that's the residual demand, and actually that's firm 2. I got to make sure I keep my firm 1 and firm 2 identities straight. Okay, residual demand for firm 2. That's fine. That's fine. Followers revenue, and we'll have the, well, let's call it total revenue for firm 2 is equal to PRB2 times Q2. And so that's going to imply that the marginal revenue for firm 2 is equal to 128 minus 7Q1 minus 14 Q2 as before. And remember, the best response function is the profit maximizing response. And so that tells us that we want to set the marginal revenue firm 2 equal to the marginal cost for firm 2. And so we have our is equal to 3 Q2. So I guess at this point in time, I'll just make sure everybody agrees with me. Is it everybody copacetic? No problems. So this is where we were before. So if you guys have an issue, then speak now or forever hold your peace. So I'm just gonna write it this way as we did before. So Q2 is equal to I'm getting my calculator out here, and 128 divided by 17, and yeah, I have 7.29, but 7.53. 7.529, 7.53 minus 7 divided by 18 0.41. It's 17, so I'd say 7.412 times Q1, which is exactly what we had before. So, any questions? No. Okay.
Oh yeah, I just have a quick question.
Okay.
So is firm 2 always going to be the follower for Ignithium?
Well, you'll have to pay attention to
Okay.
what it says in the prompts, but I think that the way that the prompts are set out, it should be.
Okay.
So I mean, obviously, I would read the question, but I don't think you'll ever have because here who's the leader and who's the follower doesn't really depend on something like the technology that's available. If you're going to try to differentiate between these two firms on the basis of technology, you would say, oh, well, it's kind of weird because the marginal cost of firm 1 is much higher than the marginal cost of firm 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's not always the case that the leader will have a higher marginal cost than the follower. It could be the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of depends because, and they might actually have, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this, and we're not doing a problem like this, but you could do one on your own, or maybe next time we get together, we could do one just to show, how you get things to be different. But even if these firms have identical marginal cost functions, it'll still turn out that the leader is more profitable than the follower, just because of the knowledge that they have that they are the leader and that the other firm will react to them. So that's kind of interesting.
Right.
But yeah, it's not like you're gonna have to read a problem and say, oh, well, it's going to be the low cost firm that's always going to be the leader, or the high cost ones, and then they'll switch from firm 1 to firm 2. So yeah, I think the way that Ignithium is set up, it should always be firm 2 that's the follower.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so let me go here, and this is what we took from the last line of the whiteboard, and now I'm going to put step 2, find the profit maximizing level of output for the leader. And by leader, we mean firm 1. Okay. Okay. So now we do the same thing as before. So the difference is we want to find the quantity where the marginal revenue of firm 1 is equal to the marginal cost of firm 1. But our revenue is going to be different. So the total revenue for firm 1 is going to be equal to, and remember we had our PB, right? Is equal to, and I don't want to confuse you guys too much, so I'm going to kind of do this in a little bit more. Our original inverse demand function, right? And then from there, we'll do the residual demand for firm 1. So call it PRB1. And we have 128 minus 7 Q1 and then minus 7 Q2, but now we're going to put in the reaction function. Okay. Okay. So now we could go ahead and reduce this and kind of simplify things if we wanted to. And so I guess why don't we go ahead and do that just to make the math look better. So does everybody see what I did? Does anybody have any questions? Right? The real difference is, and I'll put note, right? PRB1 looks this way, right? We have 128 minus 7Q1 minus 7, and now it's Q2, where Q2 is equal to some function of Q1, right? Where Q2 is the best response function of firm 2. Okay. Does anybody have any questions right now? I think it's should be clearer. And so you guys have calculators. Why don't you guys take a second and go ahead and simplify the residual demand for firm 1 before we move on. Okay. And I'll work on it too. So I'll ask you guys. So what did you guys get? Somebody want to raise their hand and tell me what their simplified version of PRB1 is? So anybody have it? Greg, you have your hand up. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm typing it in right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I got too. So does everybody agree with Greg? Anybody disagree with Greg? Okay. So I'll put PRB1 is equal. So this is just simplifying it to make our lives a little bit easier. 4.116 Q1. So now we should be fine, right? Because we could go ahead and get the total revenue for firm 1, which is going to be the PRB1 times Q1. And then, but that's just going to imply, so this is kind of like the question I think that Robin asked earlier, like, is it going to be anything more than a quadratic? Well, you guys can see now it's just a quadratic. So the residual demand is still linear. So we can just go ahead and say, oh, we know residual marginal revenue, or the marginal revenue function for the firm in this case is going to be like it was before, 75.29 minus 2 times 4.116. So that's going to be 8.232. I want to make sure I don't goof you guys up. So yeah, 232 Q1, right? And now we just set this equal to, now find MR1 is equal to MC1. So we have is equal to 10 Q1. And so notice we have an equation just in terms of Q1. And so we would have Q1 star, our profit maximizing quantity, should be the 75.29 divided by 18.232, and so 75.29 divided by 18.232, and I get 4.129. Okay. And yes, if you guys remember, we wrote down in the beginning that 4.13 was the answer for magnesium. So does anybody have any questions? Questions? You still have your hand up, Greg. I don't know if that means you have a question or you were just...
No, I just forgot, sorry.
Yeah. So now, to find out the output for firm 2, we would just plug this back into the reaction function for firm 2, and we have the output for firm 1, the output for firm 2, and then we can find the price like we did before. So we're all good. So what I would suggest for next time is go ahead and work on the remaining questions on the Cournot homework. You know, work on the, what we call the Stackelberg section on ignium. So the remaining problems. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop